Hi, this is Polenik from C3 Method. I was recently asked what my two favorite back exercises were, so I wanted to share that in today's video. However, I'm going to start with what I actually do to warm up my back. I believe that this is important because it prepares the muscles that I want to target, and it allows the main exercises that I actually like to be more efficient, have better mind-muscle connection. So I feel as though the warm-up is an integral part of making sure that those exercises feel as good as they do. The first thing I'll do is start by warming up and actually working out my rear delts, the back of my shoulders. My favorite option I have here at home is on the Sorinex Apex rack. I'll use our cable stations and do reverse flies. And then I pair that with a dumbbell exercise called a Grimes raise. There's a bodybuilder named Regan Grimes, and whenever he used to be trained by Milo Sarchev, he did a variation of a dumbbell raise that I really liked to prepare the rhomboids, the lower and middle traps. So I'll show you that exercise as well. So for the reverse flies, I just grab the cable. I grab it on the other side of this little ball just to give me a better grip. And then I'll crisscross with the other side. And I usually warm up doing sets of 20 and then eventually get to heavier sets of like 10 to 14 reps. So I'll show you a working set. With this exercise, I do think of opening up my back a little bit. So this definitely does get some of my rhomboids, lower and middle traps involved, not just the rear delts. And this is part of just kind of warming up everything in the upper back. If I wanted to be more strict to just my rear delts, then I would actually lock my back in place like this. And now I'm just pivoting through my shoulders. However, if I want to get that upper back warm up, I'll go ahead and allow the shoulder blades to kind of open in between the reps. So you can see a little bit of the difference there in how I would perform those two variations. So after I'm done with that, I'll now go to the dumbbells. Let me just move the camera. Okay, so the dumbbells, what this is instead of a standard lateral raise where you're coming up and to the sides and you're trying to keep your shoulder joints in place, with this, I'm actually going to be letting my upper back open and I'm going to be pulling up and back. I have a variation of a T-bar row that I like to perform as well as one of my favorite back exercises. And it comes at an angle, so when I have it set up and I'm kind of pulling up and back like this, when I'm doing these dumbbells, I'm thinking of that same diagonal pathway. So I'll show you a set here. And usually I'll warm up with sets of like 20-ish, and then eventually get down to heavier sets of 10 to 14. So with this, I'm just thinking again of opening and squeezing my upper back and really pumping that upper back, mid-back area full of blood. So I usually start with around 20-pound dumbbells like I'm doing now, and then I'll get up to around 40 to 50 depending on the day. But this is a really good movement. I'll just stop there. But this is a good movement to pair with the rear delts. The reverse flies kind of warms up the back of the shoulders and kind of the outside. And then this really pumps up that dead center of the back. So I usually do 3, 4, even 5 sets of these back and forth, starting with sets of 20, working my way down to a couple sets of 10 to 14. And then whatever back movements I go into, they always feel a lot better. The first of my two favorite back exercises is a cable seated row. I like to set this up in a couple specific ways and perform it in a specific way, so I'll explain that now. What I like to do is I like to have my seat higher than my feet, and that allows me to get a really good angle where I can lean forward into the movement, which minimizes lower back involvement and minimizes my body's ability to kind of cheat the movement. So it helps to kind of lock me in place. And then with the setup and the angle, it really targets the middle and lower portion of the traps. So the trapezius muscle goes from like your neck down to the middle of your back. I really want to work on the lower half. I'm really aiming between the shoulder blades. This angle with that slight forward lean really locks that in place. And then when I'm performing this movement, I think of letting my shoulder blades open and stretch and then squeeze. So I'm not really paying attention to what the handle is doing or what my arms or hands are doing. I'm really just thinking of opening up my back and then squeezing my back and allowing my shoulders to move to allow that middle back musculature to do all the work. I usually start with a lighter weight, get a lot of sets of around 20, then I drop to like 15, and then I'll go down to sets of usually 10 to 14. Sometimes I'll go a little heavier, maybe a couple sets of 8. But I find that if I go too heavy, too many other things get involved, and I don't get that good mind-muscle connection with the middle of my back. So I like to start with high reps, really fine-tune the movement, get that pump in the middle back, and then progressively get heavier and heavier. So with this movement, I do like to use a narrow neutral grip handle. This is from Rogue. I really like this one. I also like that the handles don't rotate or spin. So when I'm grabbing the handle, I actually grab past the handle, like I'm hooking the handle. And then when I create torque and kind of tighten my grip, I can better feel my back. So I actually like having my wrist kind of like hooked around the handle as I'm trying to squeeze through my back. That minimizes bicep and forearm involvement, and it helps me get that isolation I'm looking for. So with this, again, I'll lean forward, get my hands on the grip, and then I usually will sit back enough to where the weight like loads into my muscles. And you can see I have that forward angle. So now I'm going to pull back and squeeze. And then from this position, I'm just looking to release my shoulder blades and then squeeze, release, squeeze. So I'll get a little bit of a rhythm going so that way I can kind of pump up that muscle. But that's essentially what this movement is just a mid-back shrug. And that is my goal, is really pumping up the middle of my back. And when you start with the light weight, it really helps you feel that muscle as you're now getting more and more reps in. So I'll do a couple more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's what it looks like with lighter weights. I'll continue to warm up and then show you like a max weight set. But it's just that nice little kind of rhythm, like pumping movement, and thinking of it almost like a shrug rather than a row where your arms are moving a lot. I'm just thinking of like releasing the back, squeezing the back, and doing that with a good rhythm, high reps, get it pumped up, and then get it nice and heavy by the working sets. And the second back exercise is pull-ups. It's hard to argue with anything else being more effective than pull-ups. I want to show you, though, one of the ways in which I like to modify how I perform this in order to better target my lats. So the exercise we just did was more for the middle of the back. This will be complementary because it now targets the outside of the back, your lats. And specifically, what I'll do with this is when I pull up to the top, I want to think of pushing my chest in between my hands as I descend to the bottom. This is going to help make sure that I get a better stretch in my lats. On the way up, it's good or ideal if we could stay more in between our hands. However, if I have to cheat that a little bit in order to get the contraction, I will go ahead and do that. But then during the eccentric, I'll lean into it so that way I can isolate my lats better. At my body weight, I really can't do a lot of pull-ups. I wish I could. So I usually will do sets of 3 to 5 because I like to have a really good control in the motion, but I'll do a lot of sets. It's not uncommon for me to do like 8, 9, even 10 sets of these in order to get the full volume that I want. So usually once I'm warmed up with my back workout, I'll do those reverse flies, those grime raises. And then as I would set up the row, if I'm doing a couple warm-ups, I do pull-ups in between. Then when I'm doing my working sets of rows, I'll do pull-ups in between. And then maybe if I go to another movement, maybe I do T-bar rows, chest-supported rows, anything else, I'll do some more sets of pull-ups in between. That's how I like to do it, is use basically a trailing superset. So it's supersets with everything else in the workout, and that helps me get the total volume that I want. So I do use wrist straps just to help me make sure I isolate my back. I don't want to be thinking of what my biceps or forearms or grip is doing. So I'll get in place here. I do also usually use a wide overhand grip. I find that to be the best on the eccentric stretch for the lats. So we'll get a couple reps in, and you'll notice at the top I'm going to be leaning into the movement. Okay, so you can see there is, as I got to the top, I really pushed my chest in between, and I went very slow on the eccentric. The main benefit of this movement is the eccentric portion. So I'll do the contraction at whatever speed I can, and then the eccentric, I want to really kind of extend that out. Make sure that takes like 3 seconds, maybe even longer, but really feel the lats pulling and opening up on the way down. It really doesn't matter how many reps you do per set. You can just do more sets. So I would rather do a set like that where I do 3 and it's super controlled, because that way it's a maximal stimulus, and then I'll just add more sets. If I try to go faster through the eccentric, maybe I can get 4 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, but who cares? I don't care how many reps I do, I care about the eccentric stimulus. So I would rather do less reps and a better eccentric stimulus. That'll get me much better lat development. So that is exercise number 2. So I showed you the warm-up, which is reverse flies and the dumbbell grimes raises. The row is definitely my favorite. If I can only do one back exercise, that would be that. And then if I want to do a second exercise, pull-ups with a nice slow eccentric is a really good complement. Okay, that's everything. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and thank you for watching.